Welcome to Kaju Talk. I'm Sifu Steve Miller,
And I'm Sifu Dave Charlesworth.
and we're going to clear the air here with a little bit of backstory. Aren't we, Dave?
Well, it sounds like a good time to me.
So let's turn the clock back a little bit to Newberg, Oregon, and talk about the years 1983 to 1988.
Okay. Well, I guess we'd probably starting off with me because 1983-ish is about the time that I started KAJUKENBO under Sifu Sid Lopez in Newberg, Oregon. I'm trying to remember where the school was located. I was right next to the First Christian Church there on is that Portland Road?
It would
But
be on it would be on Second Street in Newberg.
so I started with Sifu Sid Lopez back then. I was a pretty rough little kid, got in a lot of fights and things like that, and saw the school and begged my dad to take me by there. And we met Sifu Sid Lopez for the first time. And my dad was kind of hesitant to sign me up for KAJUKENBO at that point because he's like, well, I'll tell you what there, Sid, my boy gets in a lot of fights. And of course, Sid had the perfect answer for that. He basically just said, don't worry, Mr. Charlesworth. If he gets in any more fights, I'll kick his ass. So therefore, I was pretty much done fighting at that point. In fact, I never actually got into another official fight, I'll say, other
Yeah,
than a
yeah. I was going to say you weren't done fighting; you just started, but then it went to the tournaments and not on the streets.
yeah, things got a little bit more regulated. I did do some tournament action and whatnot. I did pretty well in tournaments, had a bunch of trophies and whatnot. Fought some full contact as well. Fought in the adult division. But I spent 5.5 years under Sifu Sid Lopez. During that time frame, I met a lot of people, you know. So I was under him until I went to boot camp in 1988. And if memory serves me right, you came in shortly thereafter, didn't you? Or right around that time period, or a little bit before, I think.
Yeah, the reason I was saying 1983 to 1988 is I joined Kanju Kembo with Sifu Sid Lopez back in 88 or 89, but if you shipped out to boot camp in 88, um it had to be 88, like the tail end of 88. I think it was summer of 88 possibly. And I'm sure we could go down a list of names that even appear on the family tree, like Brian Fraser, the late
Yeah.
David Funk, rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Beth Bailey, Sifu Beth Bailey, she was, or you can call her Simo if you want, but she was pretty much running the school because Sifu Sid was coming down from Portland only on occasion. Usually we would see more Sifu Sid just before a tournament or a belt test. And I remember most of the classes were being led by Sifu Beth Bailey and Sihing Brian Fraser.
Wow. And I think that would be a little bit after I left, I think, because when I was there, Beth and I were both green belts. She was in front of me, and I somehow kind of caught up to her. We were both green belts, and we were due to both take our brown belt test together. But I had a little unfortunate mishap with I say motorcycle, but it really was a scooter. I guess I'm comfortable myself in saying that now. But I ended up breaking my finger, and was supposed to be going to my belt test. I think it was the following weekend, and I was recovering from surgery and on Percocet, and then I told my mom, I said, "Hey, I got to go. I got to go to the belt test." And she's like, "You're not going anywhere. You're on drugs." And so I argued with my mom about it and went back and forth for at least a half an hour or so. And she ended up winning. Obviously, I couldn't drive myself on that scooter with my broken finger that was throbbing quite a bit. And being on drugs, obviously, I couldn't really drive myself anyways. So she won that argument, and Beth ended up getting her brown belt, and I didn't because I wasn't there.
Now,
Uh,
was that a little Vespa, if I remember correctly?
well, it was a Honda Elite 150 Deluxe, the little
Oh, okay, okay.
the
I thought you
pop-up
were.
headlight.
I thought
Yeah,
you were part of the little Vespa crew that was running around. There was a little Vespa crew. I
yeah,
think Willie Richards and a few of those guys had Vespas, and Ben Cash.
yeah.
Anyway, so if memory serves me well, I'm not sure. You and I probably haven't really clarified this, but I really have a vivid photographic memory of you and Beth and Dave Funk sitting on the balance beam and laughing it up. Did you come home on leave after your boot camp or something, just briefly, where you popped in and said hi at the community center?
Yeah, I'd imagine I did. In fact, I remember one time coming back on leave, and it could have been the same time or it might have been a different time because I did come by and see you guys when I'd come back on leave. But I remember going by and seeing him at a tournament uh, in I think it was in Tigard. And you guys like, yeah, he'll be at the tournament this weekend in Tigard. I said, okay, cool. So I went by the tournament and I saw him. I said, hey, Sid, how's things? And whoa, hey, you're fighting? And I'm like, no, I'm just here on leave. I'm visiting and everything. And he goes, oh, you need to fight. And I said, well, I don't have any gis. He goes, see that bag over there? I got an extra pair of gis in there and a t-shirt. Go grab them. And I did. And I'm like, but I don't have a cup. He goes, but then don't get kicked in the balls. Okay. And I ended up taking second place in the tournament at that time too. I think that was about probably 1990, probably 91. I think 90 or 91. It was right around the same time as Desert Storm, I think. So it must have been after I came back from Desert Storm or right before we went, one of the two.
Yeah,
Uh,
that sounds like our it sounds more like that's when our paths crossed because I was probably an orange belt by then on my way to purple. And um yeah, that sounds a little more like it because I just have this vivid memory of the day that you walked into the community center and I went, whoa, Dave
yeah.
Charlesworth does KAJUKENBO? I didn't know you did KAJUKENBO. I mean,
Wow.
if you really want to turn the clock back, I met you and your brother Mark through Electro Sports Video Arcade,
Yeah.
um, way back when we were kids riding BMX dirt bikes around town. I just lived 4 blocks away, and you and your brother were always there. In fact, I remember the manager had that little baseball bat behind his desk, and it said the anti-Charlesworth device. And I said, "Why do you have this baseball bat back here when you always let Dave come sit right at your desk?" He goes, "It's not for Dave; it's for his brother Mark." that
Yeah.
asshole won't quit. That asshole won't quit picking on Dave. So if I see it, I'm going to knock his block off.
Yeah. Yeah, I got quite a bit of that when I was young, that's for sure. Both of my brothers used to give me a hard time, and then after taking Kajukemba for a few years, that's kind of stopped happening for one reason or another. I could share some incidents there that probably led to that, but probably not something my brother would appreciate me sharing on here. But it's one of those things. I mean, I spent quite a bit of time, you know, doing Kajukenbo when I was there, and then unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, I went active duty in June of 1988, um, which took me into the Navy and away from you know Kajukenbo. I did find a couple of Kajukenbo schools here and there. Unfortunately, I usually found them pretty close to the time I was transferring. Come to find out, I did study for a little while, apparently at Vince Black's school in La Mesa, California. At least that's,
Nice.
by my estimation, that was his class because I asked Gary Forbeck who had a school in La Mesa, California with a chiropractic table in it. He's, oh, that's Vince Black's school. And I was like, oh, cool.
Wow.
Didn't
Yeah,
know it at the time.
that's
Uh,
a that's a that's a pretty good um That's a pretty good little check mark to put on your resume if you trained at a Vince Black school.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I don't think I ever met Vince Black. I think he was actually spending a lot of time in Hawaii at that time period, just looking back at things. It was one of his students that was running the class, and it was a black belt there. Welcomed me in the door, kept me at my current rank as a green belt. The only bad thing about any time I found another KAJUKENBO school, they were always really good about that stuff. But the problem is to get another rank, you got to learn all their techniques, which are different than the Lopez techniques. So I did get to learn quite a few new things. So I got a pretty diverse background. Not only did I have the Chun Fa method, which Sid taught, but then also I did some original method, and well, we'll get to later on. But now I'm under the Jimenez method, formerly known as the Gaylord method. Well, which still exists, but that's another story in itself. So basically, three different methods of KAJUKENBO I've been exposed to. Not as much on the original method as obviously Chun Fa method. And in fact, the Chun Fa method, I was ready for my brown belt, and it was only time from brown belt to black belt. So I pretty much knew my belt requirements through black under Sid Lopez. And it was just a matter of getting tested and then doing my time and teaching for a bit before, getting that promotion to black belt.
When it comes to KAJUKENBO and it comes to the Gaylord method, honestly, all politics set aside, Charles Henry Gaylord taught Gabriel Vargas, who taught Sid Lopez, who taught us. Charles Henry Gaylord taught Anthony Jimenez, who is now our commander in chief. So, I mean, I don't really care for politics too much. And I think the family tree kind of speaks for itself. That's why we have it. And I would like to get into, it might even just be a whole separate episode just talking about Senior Grandmaster Gabe Vargas, because we probably need to clear the air on that a little bit. I actually had the pleasure of driving Sifu Sid Lopez down to an IKA tournament. I believe it was 1993. And I can go look at that real quick just to tell you for sure. And so we drove from, actually, his place of employment at the time was in Tualatin, Oregon. And I picked him up from Newburgh. I went from Newburgh to Tualatin, and I picked up Sifu Sid and his kids. We took his kids. I think everybody might have gone. I think it might have been Jasmine, Janaea, and Alexis. And it was the July 25th, 1992, second annual KAJUKENBO Invitational Championships at Henry J. Kaiser Arena in Oakland, the Oakland Auditorium, and on 10th and Fallon Streets. I'm looking at the ticket stub right now. Elimination started at 10 a.m. that day, and the evening finals started at 7. So that was quite an experience. I could do a whole episode based on just that and other stuff. We're going to have plenty of stuff to talk about, and I think it's going to be hard to keep within the 30-minute guideline or time frame that we're shooting for, but we'll do it. We'll just put everything into segments and parts, part 1, part 2. So not to get too far off track, we're just kind of really here trying to clear the air. A lot of people, I know just from talking to you, Dave, that there's people out there nitpicking and making statements or making claims. I wouldn't even say making claims, but making statements about you and the validity of your training, etc. So I really wanted to give you a chance on this platform to kind of be interviewed a little bit and give your backstory. And so the earlier part of that we've just covered. Now, if we fast forward a little bit to Newburgh 2010, I was teaching. By then, I was a third-degree black belt under Sifu Tim Gagne, who's now a grandmaster in the KAA. And I was teaching at Top Spin Tennis and Indoor Sports in Newburgh, Oregon. And you, sir, were on leave and came to play at a couple of our classes. In fact, my assistant back then, my senior student, Benjamin Grimm, he was present for that. I believe I gave you 1 or 2 shirts to take home with you because you ended up taking one of those and making an embroidery project out of that one, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so I just remember after a couple 2 or 3 drop-ins where you played around with us and we kind of just went over old Chua curriculum that we learned from Sifu Sid Lopez, and it was a lot of fun. And you looked at me and you said, "You know what, Steve? I'm going to retire in Italy and open a KAJUKENBO school." And I offered you support from that day forward.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, you didn't receive any of that support that I so desperately wanted you to get because I was just trying to, connect you with my commander in chief at the time, Mr. Gagne. And well, I guess you just heard crickets chirping when you kept trying to get a hold of that guy, unfortunately.
Well, I did
So,
get a hold of him. I did talk to him. Um, so he's to be honest with you, I mean, me and Tim Gagne have a little bit of history because when Sifu Sid was not coming around much after Tim and Alex got promoted to black belt, there was a time period there where Tim Gagne, which was back then would be Seabuck Gagne, we used to call him Sifu though, as he came out to Newburgh, and he was actually teaching all the classes out in Newburgh before Beth Bailey got her black belt. And then I guess there was a big to do there once Beth got her black belt, and then who was going to take over what. It sounds like Beth did for quite a while. And then I heard that Tim Gagne came back into the picture later on. So yeah,
actually,
I did.
actually, let me interject for a second. So, Sifu
Yeah.
Tim, he did come out and teach a few classes when I was still coming up through the ranks to orange and purple. I did not ever test for anything above purple with Sifu Sid, just for the record, while we're on the subject of rank. I went away, studied other arts, achieved black belt rank in uh, one other martial art, and on my way to a black belt recognition in another Kenpo art. Um, but that was a long journey. Eventually took some time and going around and around for that thing. We'll have to take a whole nother episode just to cover some of my backstory and history and journey through Old Pine Tree Kenpo, aka the Mitose system. Will in fact be featuring Professor Randy Lucas and Hanshi Nimr Hassan, probably on that episode, because it will require one full episode, I'm sure, at least a half an hour, if not multiple parts of episodes. So anyway, long story short, Sifu Tim Gagne was coming out. I in fact remember vividly the first time I was just kind of taken aback by his prowess was he came and taught 360-degree angles of attack, and that was the subject material. It was quite the class. I mean, every one of us, I think it was the first class that Sifu Tim came out and taught at the community center in Newburgh, and it was very well received by everyone there. And I guess he hadn't been out for a while. I know I hadn't seen him until then, and so
Wow.
probably from the days you're talking about when he was running the classes, for whatever reason he hadn't been out. Obviously, once Beth got her black belt, she lived closer. It was easier for her to come teach, and so Frazier was a green belt when I started, and then I actually tested for my orange belt while he tested for his brown belt. And Sifu Lopez and everybody nicknamed him Dirt Boy because brown is like the soil of the earth. So Brian Frazier's nickname for that entire day was Dirt Boy. And my orange belt test and his brown belt test was in the backyard of Mr. Keith Cox, who um, Keith Cox ended up on the TV series Leverage, and I guess he's done a bunch of work in Hollywood, so to speak, or at least Hollywood work in the Portland area, because Leverage came to Portland for quite some time. I know several people that were involved in that. Not all KAJUKENBO people, so I won't even get into names. But anyway, so just to stay on track, so yeah, after 2010, you went back in on duty, and we didn't really talk for a while until whatever year it was that you decided to start teaching Kajukenbo in Italy. What year was that, Dave?
Oh, shoot. That was probably around, well, I'd say it's probably after COVID. So it was 2021, I think. Um, yeah, because I did talk with Tim Gagne a little bit prior to uh, well, essentially what ended up happening is I was talking to him and I was like, hey, I really regret not getting my black belt, that kind of thing. And I kind of feel like not only did I like, fail to achieve that before I left kind of thing. And I was really kind of upset about that because, I very well could have. I had just enough time to do it. Well, had I went to that brown belt test, that was really what it hinged on. Because come to find out from talking to Beth Bailey, she had stated that Sid said that he would have promoted me if I'd have only showed up. And that was my intention to do so, obviously, and I tried to, but mom kind of held me back from that. But hey, it is what it is, and maybe the reasons are there. So what I was talking with Tim probably in 2020 around the COVID period, because I had found the name of a guy that was up in Rome that's supposedly teaching Kajukenbo at that time. And I tried to get a hold of the guy, but he never answered me. So I was talking to Tim about it, and he's like, "Well, hey, they got some stuff coming, some stuff cooking, that sort of thing." Which I assume he's referring to, the interim school stuff that's on the KA website right now. That was still in development back then. But then I ended up getting a hold of Gary Forback, and he actually called this guy up in Rome, and he got a hold of him. And next thing you know, I got a phone call from Marco Lungo up in Rome, and I trained under him for a little bit and got my brown belt under him. And then during the course of the whole COVID thing and everything, made classes, pretty much very difficult to non-existent. So we were doing a lot of things on Zoom and that sort of thing. And I got a hold of Senior Grandmaster Jimenez and started talking with him as I ordered some uniforms from him because I wanted to get some of those nice custom uniforms with the embroidery on it and everything. And I thought that looked pretty cool. So that ended up in starting a discussion with him regarding my lineage and everything else and being under Sid Lopez. And he was very close friends with Sid Lopez, as you probably well know. In fact, Sid Lopez lived at his house for quite a bit of time. And, due to our shared lineage and everything else, I ended up getting promoted to student black belt under the WWKF. And was basically told that I must learn the Gaylord method. So I started learning the Gaylord method. And I think I've done a rather well job of doing that, obviously, because now I've been promoted to up to third degree now since then. And, here we are today, our paths cross again as you joined the WWKF. And,
Yes,
here we
sir.
are.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was offered in 2016. I was offered to make the lateral transition and move over to WWKF after a pretty good 2.5 hour phone call, maybe 3 hour phone call with Senior Grandmaster Jimenez. Um, just had a great time talking, and I really have always liked him. And I learned a lot about Kajukenbo history that I had an incorrect perception thereof. And I say that because that's basically how I felt after the phone call. I thought, wow, I've been I've been fed a bunch of um, falsehood that was not accurate, and Senior Grandmaster Jimenez cleared a lot of that up, and it all kind of fit because I don't think a lot of people know that when I took so going back to the IKA tournament um, that I went to, I drove Sifu Sid Lopez, who's now Senior Grandmaster Lopez or Grandmaster Lopez. I drove him and his kids down to the tournament. There were actually other people. Well, my car broke down, so I had my friend Chris Dunn. Um, he had a Chrysler LeBaron, and we had everybody in that car. And we went down to the tournament, and then Sifu Bill Owens offered his dojo for a lot of travelers to come crash out on the floor with their sleeping bags and whatnot. And so we all were there, and there was a whole bunch of cool stuff going on, like capoeira. They had some capoeira demonstrations and showed us some capoeira training techniques, and then kind of showcased like some of the black belts that were there, got up and demonstrated. And we all had a great time. I think there might have even been some food or something, or people brought food in. All I remember is by the end of that, Sifu Sid wanted a ride to Sigung Gabe Vargas's place in Sunol and from Oakland. And Rob Block, my guy Chris, my friend Chris that drove us down in the Chrysler LeBaron, he didn't want to drive anymore. He was tired. And Rob Block had a maroon Geo Metro. And Rob was another one of the Newberg students at the community center. And Sifu Sid was trying to get Rob to drive him to Sigung Gabriel Vargas's house. And Rob didn't want to drive. So Sifu Sid looked at me. He never called me by the right name. I was always Joe. And he looked at me and he goes, "Hey, Joe, you're going to drive me." And I said, "Well, I guess I'm going to drive you." So I took Sifu Sid and his 3 kids, and we threw the kids in the back seat. And Sifu Sid and I hopped in the front seats of the Geo Metro and drove to a payphone at a Sherry's restaurant or a Denny's or something. We kept having to stop at all these payphones because Sifu Sid kept getting lost. It had been a while, I guess, since he made a trip. Well, I'm not sure how many times he drove from Sifu Bill Owens' school to Sifu Gabe Vargas's house or his little cabin. But we eventually got there, and then we met at maybe a Sherry's or some little, I think it was a little market at the base of the hill that led up to the cabins in Sunol where Sigung Gabe probably still lives. And there was a pool there and stuff. So I'll have to save that for the episode that we'll do just dedicated to clearing the air about Sigung or Senior Grandmaster Gabriel Vargas, because I do believe the air is still in need of clearing. We still need to clear the air when it comes to talking about that man. But anyway, on that weekend, so that was once again July 25th, 1992. So it was on or about July 25th. I think it was the 26th that Sifu Sid Lopez was promoted to 6th-degree black belt in Sigung Gabriel Vargas's backyard at a little picnic table. I watched it. He got promoted. Sifu Sid got promoted from 5th-degree black belt to 6th-degree black belt and went from Sifu to Sigung. So I'll go over that again in its own separate episode, but rumors and crap about Gabe are going to get blown out of the water when we do that episode, because I personally stayed there in the cabin and I didn't feel threatened at all. Neither did any of the other Lopez kids. So I'm just going to throw that out there. We all had a great time. Gabe was a great host. He taught me a little bit of Qigong. I was learning Tiger and Crane form from Sifu Sid privately. And I remember I asked Sigung Vargas, because I was like blown away. I mean, Sifu Sid was like a hero to me. So when I got to meet Sigung Gabe, I was just blown away. I couldn't believe I was right there in the man's house. And we were out on the front porch, and I asked him, "Could I please ask you a question, sir, about training?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, "Actually, could I ask you 2 questions, one about external and one about internal?" He said, "Go for it." So I asked him, and I was showing him what I was learning. And he said, "Oh, I know that form. I taught Sifu Sid that form." I said, "I figured you probably did." He goes, "Well, I'm going to answer both your questions at once." And he corrected me a little bit. I'll go into more detail in the other episode, but it was great. And I slept overnight. I got to shut up and save the rest for the next episode because we're running out of time. But yeah, up to present, after 2016, I was still loyal to Sifu Tim Gagne in 2016. I had to tell Senior Grandmaster Jimenez, thanks but no thanks. Let's stay friends and I'll get back to you. So after 5 years of me being pretty much retired from KAJUKENBO and everything, um, 2 or 3 of those years, I had parted ways with Sifu Tim Gagne 2 to 3 years prior to actually talking to you about whether or not I should approach Senior Grandmaster Jimenez again regarding the WWKF. And so we came to that point where I said, Sifu Charlesworth, do you think he'd still take me? And you said, yeah, I think he would. And so you reached out to Senior Grandmaster Jimenez, and then I did. And now I'm in the WWKF right here with you, buddy. So it's just like old times, except we live farther apart.
Well, I'm glad to see you're with us and everything, and I think it's a great thing for us, and I think it's a good thing for KAJUKENBO, and hopefully we'll be able to do some things and some podcasts, some Spotify stuff together that we're going to be able to maybe clear some air and get some information out there. Because I think one of the things that a lot of people don't know is it's the WWKF is all about helping people and helping people to find their way and to learn KAJUKENBO. And it's not something that everybody makes it sound, like it's, something tragic or something. But I can only speak to my experiences. And all I know is Senior Grandmaster Jimenez and the WWKAA, the WWKF was always there for me, it wasn't hard to get the support that I needed from Senior Grandmaster. In fact, we've done a lot of video things back and forth, and every time I do something a little bit wrong here and there, he'll correct me, and we'll do some videoing back and forth and do some distance type training kind of thing. It does make it more challenging because I'm in Italy and he's in California and whatnot, but I think we're getting it done. And I think that's happening all over the world, to be honest with you. And I know that Senior Grandmaster New has gone out to Egypt, has gone out to Kuwait. And I know that there's more that's planned, that both of them, both Senior Grandmaster Jimenez and Senior Grandmaster New, are planning to go to a lot of other places too, as well, to help people to learn KAJUKENBO. And, from my experience, I mean, there has been no charge for promotions. There has been no, difficulty there in that arena,
Yeah, I'd like to interject. I gotta give a big salute to Senior Grandmaster Jimenez right now for his availability, his transparency. Um, I just got nothing but great things to say about him and what he's done for me. There's going to need to be, this is obviously going to be a 45-minute kickoff episode if we don't start pushing it toward the hour mark, but we're already coming up on the 45. So the 30 minutes is out the window. But yeah, I just have to say I was offered the move in 2016 and didn't take it. And then when I finally did take it just this last year, um, I was welcomed just as warmly as before. I'm really happy to be with Senior Grandmaster Jimenez and the WWKF. I think it's great that you and I have a chance to work together. Now, I probably should make it known that it was largely due to health reasons that I had to retire from KAJUKENBO. And I am still retired from training and teaching due to health reasons. Those days are over for me, unfortunately, as much as I love it. I will always treasure the days when I was training. In fact, just for the record, I still have a lot of love and respect for Sifu Tim Gagne and the years that I spent under his tutelage. But we just don't see eye to eye on a lot of things anymore, and we don't get along so well. And quite honestly, his availability, um, for me at least, over the phone, the last couple years that I was still with him, was just next to nothing. And that was a big part of why I parted ways with him. I begged him to come out here and spend a weekend at my place after my health catastrophe. And I begged him for 2 years to come out here. And I'm not even going to get into the details of that, but it still kind of breaks my heart that he didn't take me up on the offer when all I wanted to do was see the man for a weekend. And getting him on the phone was almost impossible. And I understand he's a busy guy, but he just never seemed to have any time for me when I know he had time for other people. So I figure I just wasn't so important anymore. And it's sad, uh, but it is what it is. And it's not really about me. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here or have a pity party, a one man pity party. I still love and respect him. And I am very thankful for the time I spent with him. I treasure all of the training time. He is the one who brought me up to the third degree black belt rank in 2004. I tested from 8 a.m. till 6:30 p.m. that day, and a lot of blood and sweat went into that, achieving that rank, and it almost broke my ankle. Almost broke my ankle. I limped out of that test, and it was great. I mean, that's how Kajukembo should be. There should be some blood on the floor, and someone should be limping, in my opinion. Or Joe ain't happy. Joe ain't happy in heaven if he's not looking down and seeing some blood on the floor. Amen.
Mm.
Yeah, I know. I can see you nodding, but the Spotify listeners cannot.
Oh
So
yeah, it's that's a beautiful thing, you know. I mean, did it rain that day? You know, if it did, maybe that would see Joe crying, you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't think it rained that day. In fact, we went to Oregon City Izzy's, and boy, I couldn't eat enough food after that. And
Wow.
we did this knife sparring stuff where we marked up the knives with a like a camouflage, like a camo stick you would paint your face with if you're going out in the jungle. And we all had white T-shirts in our duffel bags. And Sifu Tim said, "Put on the white shirts." And all the black belts had to spar with knives that left camo stick marks on your body. And after my test, we were sitting there eating at Izzy's in Oregon City, and um, I believe I'm not quite sure about that exact location, but I could believe that is true. It was Sifu John Frost the third. That was his school at home, his home school in his backyard where we tested. And one of my students who's on the black belt family tree, Jeremiah Kerber, he said, "Sifu, lift your chin." And I did. And he goes, "Huh, that's what I thought." I go, "What? Did I have a bruise or something? Did I get throat punched?" And he goes,
Ugh. Oh.
"No, you got a camo stick mark on your throat, Sifu. I think you got cut pretty bad." I'm like, "Shit. How did that happen?"
You know, but I mean, I got to say too, you know, I mean, uh, I guess I used to say that I was under Seafood Tim for about, you know, 6 months to a year, I guess, of that 5.5 years time that I was under Sid Lopez. But the reality of it is Sid Lopez was still my Sifu at that point, and Tim was a Seabach, even though he was the one coming out teaching classes for about the last 6 months to a year that I was there, kind of thing. So, you know, so we have some shared lineage, him and I, you know. We both were under Sifu Lopez. He got his black belt under Sifu Lopez. I didn't. I really wish I would have, but you know, it brought me to where I am today. And to be honest with you, I think my experience in KAJUKENBO now is so much more diverse than it would have been had I you know, got my black belt there and not continued training. Now I haven't gone out and done a lot of other things, you know, training on other systems and, you know, things like that. Pretty much just stuck with KAJUKENBO all around. But in my travels and in my searching for finishing what I started, you know, I got to say that I have some experience in, you know, three methods basically of KAJUKENBO. which is kind of cool.
Well, that is cool. And I'm going to just interject here real quick. We're running out of time. We're going to be hitting the 1 hour mark here and not too long. But I just want to add, if you're going to go that route, I got to give credit to Sifu Beth Bailey, and he eventually became Sifu Brian Frazier. He was Sihing when I was training. I tested with him when he got his brown belt, and I don't believe I was at his black belt test, but he did achieve a black belt under Sifu Sid Lopez. But
Red.
one of the, yeah, little red. Well, Red, and Byron. His first name is Brian, but Sifu Sid could never get anybody's names right. So I was always Joe, and Frazier was always Byron. Hey, Byron. And so
Oh, shoot.
that part's funny, but I got to give kudos to Sifu Beth Bailey, Sihing Brian Frazier, and most importantly, rest in peace, Sifu David Funk, who was a blue belt and a green belt when I was an orange belt and a purple belt. And that man taught me a lot of painful lessons in Kajukembo with his patented, he had a hybrid wheel kick, cobra kick. No, wheel kick, funny kick. The cobra kick
Yeah.
was the cobra kick was another tricky back kick with your
Yeah.
toes, your ball of your foot. So he had a wheel kick, funny kick hybrid that he could kick anybody in the groin with.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he did a shuffle step type thing where he would just slide up and slap that foot right on your cup with almost nobody could defend against that thing. And you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. I can tell you, man, from experience, I mean, he must have been a purple belt at the time. But we were in the gym in high school. I can't remember exactly, when this took place, but I was either a blue belt or a green belt at the time. And he had been training with us for a good amount of time. I don't think he was actually a purple belt. I think he might have been just an orange belt at that time, but he's always been pretty quick. He was always pretty quick with them kicks, and he caught me in the groin. Oh, he thought, he was all, you could just see his face like elated. I got him, but then I jumped up and I did a spinning crescent kick across his jaw. And then I bent over and it was like, we had said a few choice words probably after that. And then it was kind of one of those things of, oh crap, we better not tell Sifu about this. So sorry, Sifu Lopez, if you're watching this someday.
Or listening. If you're watching on
Yeah.
YouTube or listening on Spotify, everyone,
Yep.
the cat just came out of the bag. I got to say, Charlesworth, your back spinning crescent kick, you had a reputation, because I never really trained with you back in those days. We just briefly crossed paths a few times here and there while you were on leave. But you had a very well established reputation for your back spinning crescent kick, sir.
Well, I don't expect to see me doing it now.
Now things change. Things change with time, and you get a little older, or in my case, you get a little more disabled, and a lot of
You
stuff
and
will go
both.
right out the window. Yeah, a lot of stuff will go right out the window. That's one thing I'm going to say for the record. Any of you schmucks out there watching Dave Charlesworth, Sifu Dave Charlesworth, performing Kajukembo on YouTube, I want to put 3 words on your frontal lobe: disabled military officer. All right. Do I need to say that again? Let's do it. Disabled military officer. So when you watch Sifu Dave Charlesworth on YouTube, he deserves your respect, especially if you're American, because, yeah, it's all right there. Anyway, we're out of time for this episode. We're going to be back for more because I knew this was going to run over, and we're at the 1 hour mark, but it's been a blast, Sifu Charlesworth. It's been a blast.
Yeah, I wish we had more time. I tell you, unfortunately, the longer these things get, you know, so yeah, I better cut it
Well,
short and we'll continue it another day.
Well, we'll be back for more, and there'll be part 2 and possibly a part 3 of our Kajukembo roots and our backstory.